of a music school.
Sir, we are very proud for our state and culture, but we don't have even a small school or college. Then he at once said, "What do you mean?" No, there is no such college or school. You have to make. I will make it today.
Gama pa gama pa gama gama da pa 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 da ni da 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 ni da ni da re da da da. Gama da pa 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 da ni da 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 ni da re da da ga de ma ga ni da ni pa da ni re da ni da ba ma ga. Gama ma ga re ga sa re gama pa da ni da ba ma sa re gama pa da ni da ba ma sa re gama pa da ni da ba ma ga. Tari jai, tari jam, tari jam, tari jai, tari jai, tari jai, tari jam, tari jam, tari jai, tari jai, tari jai.
The eminent poet Shitakanta Mahapatru remembers.
I believe that to an extent, he wasn't a person who can be called down to earth. He tended to soar above ground, and not only as one of the pioneering industrialists, but also as a pilot.
In 1962, China attacked India's eastern frontier. It came as a rude shock for Nehru, who always believed in peaceful coexistence with our neighbors. His earlier experience with Tibet and the later border conflict had shaken his faith. Nehru summoned Biju Patnaik to Delhi, mission advisor to the Prime Minister on defense matters. Before India could recover from the shock of the Chinese betrayal, war drums rolled from neighboring Pakistan under military dictatorship. In 1965, the nation called upon Biju Patnaik again. This time, Prime Minister Lal Bahadur Shastri had top secret information that an Indonesian naval fleet was coming to the Indian Ocean in support of the shaky Pakistan Navy. Biju Patnaik rushed to Jakarta and met his old friend President Sukarno, and the naval fleet never came. Biju Patnaik had a lifelong and personal relationship with Amit Sukarno. Biju Patnaik and his wife were present in Jakarta in the year 1947, when General Sukarno's daughter was born. Mrs. Sukarno put the baby in Mrs. Patnaik's lap. The general asked Biju Patnaik to name the baby. He looked out of the window, saw the clouds in the sky, and the name came instantly. Meghavati, daughter of the clouds. Today, Meghavati Sukarnoputri is the President of Indonesia. The people of Indonesia have always held Biju Patnaik close to their hearts. In the year 1973, the Republic of Indonesia honored him with the title of Bhumi Putra, a son of their soil. Despite the wide range of his international and national involvement, his heart always had space reserved for Odisha.
Today we are calling ourselves Odias proudly because of a person like him, most respected and encouraging to all kinds of art and culture and education and science and everything. Whenever you go, approach him. If you talk about his state, he will be very happy.
Very lovable person, very human person. A person who, unlike politicians, didn't make a mockery of love for people. For the poor, when we say poor, the politician talks about poor in general as a word. But no, for every poor man in the street, he exuded love.
And he was seated with some of his colleagues, talking to them outside the house, in the little park in front of the house. And a little boy, I think he must have been about 7 or 8 years old, came up to him came up to the group and said, "Who is Biju Patnaik amongst you?" So my father said, "I am Biju Patnaik." He said, "Well, you've promised schooling to us very poor, and I work by the roadside breaking stones. The new roads were being built for the capital, for the new capital, and I would like to be educated." So my father sent him to the Sainik school, which had recently come up in Bhubaneswar. And several years later, smart young man in an Air Force uniform came to see my parents. He'd just become an officer in the Air Force, and it was that little boy who was breaking stones to build roads.
Eminent painter Jatin Das recalls,
Then one day I'd gone, it was summer, midsummer in Cuttack, was very, very hot. There wasn't a single soul in the city. And I remember it was a Fiat car. And his driver, he's sitting at the back, I'm sitting next to him. He said, "Come, we'll have lunch together." Then near some kind of a hill, in a higher plateau, one man was walking alone. So he told the driver, "Stop the car, tell him to sit down." So this fellow got scared and somehow seated in the front seat. Then when we arrived, I didn't talk to this boy. But he gave the money to his driver, go and give it to him, that he should buy a bicycle. And when he has money, he should return that money.
when emergency was declared in the year 1975, Biju Patnaik was also arrested, along with major leaders of the opposition. Through those turbulent times, he remained captive, but his spirit remained undaunted. After he came out in the year 1977, Biju Patnaik was instrumental in forming the Janata Party. He was a prominent member of the new cabinet in the first non-Congress government in India.
But actually after the Janata experience, which is he formed a party, he looked at the left parties, what we were doing in West Bengal. And then he got in touch with us. And as I said earlier, that he became very friendly with our then General Secretary, our Secretary, not General, Secretary, Pramod Das Gupta. And he used to say, let us work together, let us have a program.
A childlike sense of wonder seemed to linger on even after achieving an eminent position. His quest for new discoveries continued throughout his life. From daredevil pilot to a successful industrialist, he went on to become a national leader.
Shitakant, I am told that you have done two major works on Jagannath Das Uriya Bhagavat and the blind tribal poet Bhima Bhui. Can I see these two books? I was astonished because I didn't expect this from him. I said, sir, I will make it available through your personal secretary or secretary very soon. And I was astonished that he not only received it, but about 2 months later, he gave me a ring and told me how he liked these two works.
Who is it? I said, no, Mu, Raghunath. Ah, come. No, are you depressed? No, person like you should not get depressed. I will not believe. Come on. Then he said, let us go out. Have you got your car? Small car? Tinny car? I said, yes. Little Herald car is there. Nana, come on. Poor man's car. Heck, should not call yourself. My father and your father both are like brothers. They are called lions of the state. When Parlakmandi Maharaja, Krishnachandra Gajapati's Diwan, my father was. So this kind of things I've heard from him. I took him to Chaudhar and we sat for a long time and he was singing so beautifully. His voice was exactly like Saigal and Pankaj Malik. Nana, you sing so well, I never heard before. Then he sang that Gori, Kahe Guman Kari Re Gori, Jab Dil Hi Toot Gaya. This song he sang. Nana, I don't sing Dil Hi Toot Gaya. Let Dil Tootne Do. Par tum haroge nahi kabhi bhi.
His thirst for knowledge was never quenched. It had egged him on to establish the Kalinga Prize for the popularization of science and technology. It was the prize that brought close to Odisha and India some of the greatest scientists of the world, like Julian Huxley, Margaret Mead, Amirali Hoodbhoy, Richie Calder, Bertrand Russell, Arthur C. Clarke, Fred Hoyle, and Jayant Narlikar.
that inspired him to create the Kalinga Science Prize. You know, it is the nation's oldest science prize. It's over half a century old. And the reason why he created the prize was, the prize in itself is not so much money, but it does invite each scientist. The prize is created to popularize science. And it does invite each scientist who gets the prize, which is given by a body of people in UNESCO, to visit India for 3 months. Now, for my father, whose obsession with India was so great, and whose love of it and whose pride in it was so great, he believed you get the greatest scientists in the world, bring them to India for 3 months. They will get so fascinated, so hypnotized by this country, that they will bring their genius for free to bear on the problems of this country.
Like his mentor Jawaharlal Nehru, the lines of the poet Robert Frost seem to be the philosophy of Biju Patnaik. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Biju Patnaik's lovable and admirable qualities made him immensely popular. Called the coalition man, he became central to the formation of the Janata Dal government in the centre and in Odisha.
Later on, he was one of the champions of United Front.
He once again returned to his familiar seat as the state's chief minister. Biju Patnaik always took political opposition in his powerful stride.
And during Mandal Commission, he used to come, by a rickshaw to office on Saturdays and Sundays. The DG of police asked him not to come by a rickshaw because there was agitation and people might take pot shot at him or throw stones at him. He said, please go, arrange your own security. Huh? I don't need security from my people.
The greatest of his qualities was his immense generosity for his time, for his work, for his trouble, for his thoughts, for everyone.
Biju Patnaik's administrative actions were as bold as his political thought. He overruled strong objections within his own ministry to raise the minimum wage in Odisha from 10 rupees to 25. He appointed 10 tribal women as his advisors. Tribal activist Sumani Jhodia remembers.
बिजू बाबू हमको बहुत दायित्व देइतिला मद आंदोलन पाई.
He supported women in their anti-liquor movement. He also gave them ownership of land. He even gave women leaders special police powers. He was a father figure. His declaration of a 33% reservation for women on all local self-government bodies and certain government jobs had deep impact on society. His fellow parliamentarian Meera Das recollects.
He is the pioneer giving the 33% reservation for women in local bodies and also in panchayats. Yes, prior to this, the Government of India took as a constitutional change. That prior to that, we had reservation. That was in panchayat. That was 30,000 ladies were elected. When we are in France for women conference, yes, then there we said that we have made it much before you think it here.
In the year 1992. Biju Patnaik initiated the Kalinga Bali Jatra to revive the memories of the ancient linkage between the two countries and to give international cooperation a contemporary thrust. Biju Patnaik had always lived courageously. In time, his fearlessness earned him the respect of his adversaries. His political opponent, Janaki Ballabh Patnaik, says,
He was a public man who created a successful image in the state.
He was, in more sense, not a politician. He was a statesman. He never, ever was afraid of speaking out his mind.
Fearlessness came from a profound sense of justice. My father, his own family, was so involved. I mean, he was a fearless man, but he was always trying to live up to the fearlessness of his own cousins. He had two cousins, a boy of 19 who was a great poet who led, he and another boy led the Chittagong Armory raid. That boy was shot to death on the steps of the Chittagong Armory. His younger brother, at the age of 14, was imprisoned, was sent off to the Andaman Islands, where he was kept in chains for 17 years. So my father considered them fearless.
it was his courage and his charisma that made him a favorite with Pandit Nehru. He featured in a book called After Nehru Who, written by the American journalist Wallace Hangan during the last years of Nehru's life.
The man who would rule this country after Nehru was being talked about. There were many. It was not merely Wallace Hangan who thought that here is somebody who could be one of the persons, who could perhaps wear his mantle, Nehru's mantle, because he was not only very well versed in the art of administration, had an industrial background, was a visionary, but then the movement of Indian political system is such that he perhaps was one of those who didn't know the gentle art of being diplomatic with persons, how to influence, to win friends and influence people. To my best of awareness about him, he never cared for that.
The man looked, his ideas were far ahead of the times for people to understand. And she was born also in the wrong state.
Biju Patnaik was also caught in the turmoil of the 90s, with the breakdown of many established political values and ideologies.
Mufti Muhammad Said, Kashmir Chief Minister, was Home Minister then. When the question was of releasing Mufti's daughter in exchange for 8 hardcore militants, Biju Babu was very, very tough on that issue. He said, Mufti, if you want your daughter to be released, first resign as Home Minister.
And I find now it's very frustrating the way he was showing his frustration towards the end. A lot of people thought that he was getting very angry. He would slap somebody, or he was getting angry, getting upset, very lonely. Because to translate his ideas and vision, there were not many people. This is the actual problem.
Whereas he was a very, very restless person, and the restlessness was rooted in his desire to see that the country becomes great. And the various obstacles that would come in the way, and the slowness with which our bureaucracy, our politics, just about everything moved here, is what made him restless. He was an extraordinary person.